So this could save your marriage. We received some really good advice from some mentors recently because we've been going through a difficult season because we have a kid. We're currently pregnant. Megan's pregnant. And it's just been difficult. And like, you don't have to be another statistic. You can beat the 50% mark. And Megan heard a story that was just grievous, but just provoked her spirit to more for marriage.
So I know of this couple who were married for 20, 25 years, and they just got together one day and made a list of like 25 things they hated about each other. And then they got divorced.
That's crazy. Like 25 years, no talking, but then they list this stuff out and like, it's over.
And then it's over. And they had like teenage young adult daughters. And it was just devastating because if they had done the work in the beginning, if they had put in the effort and the time, it could have been a totally different outcome.
And this goes to our first tip where our mentor said, have couch time weekly, daily. Your kids need to see this. We actually learned about it in parenting class where they're like, before you think about parenting, you have to think about your marriage because your marriage is the foundation for your family and you need to have daily couch time. And I know for us as kid number 1 came along and now pregnancy number 2 is here. We haven't been communicating as much as we should. We haven't been connecting in the daily life. It's just been the routine and the grind. And like the only conversations we've been having is about like scheduling and that and work and stuff. But no, you have to foster connection through daily couch time.
This one's really big for me because my love language actually is quality time. And so if I'm not getting that fill of that time together, not feeling connected, not getting connection, it's hard to stir up those good emotions about your spouse if you're not connecting and you're not communicating.
And we actually did this one in an interesting way this week. We took a weekend getaway where it was like a 6-hour car trip, and it just allowed us to talk for those 6 hours just to connect and catch up, which was a breath of fresh air.
I think something that goes along with couch time is not being afraid to open up about those difficult conversations, those things you need to talk through, those things that you don't want to harbor resentment for like later, years down the road. So it's really, really important to actually communicate and open up about those things that are hard to talk about. I mean, there are some things that are really the most difficult conversations usually revolve around like sex and finances and just different things. Those are some big ones, but any little thing, conflict, whatever it is, we need to talk through those things.
Yeah. And I think couch time protects you from avoiding the difficult conversations and actually having them.
Yeah, because if your conversation is always about your schedule or about what's for dinner, then it's not deep enough to take you into those hard to go places.
And we've definitely been there lately of like avoiding things and just like putting our head down and going through it. But now it's like, okay, look me in the eye. Let's talk through this. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah. And it also, I mean, you're there for each other. The Bible calls Eve Adam's helpmate. And we're there for each other to help each other go through the harder things, to have the harder conversations, not just what we're facing, together with each other, but outside of that, in work situations, relationships, you have to be able to have that person that's going to help you get through those things, health concerns, all these things. You need to have that connection to actually get through those things. I mean, can you imagine if something is going on in your life and the one person who's supposed to be there for you, you feel so disconnected from that you feel like you can't go to them about anything. It's hard to imagine now if you're like engaged or you're dating and everything's exciting. And even the first year of marriage, everything's still exciting and it's the honeymoon phase and you're just in love and you can't imagine anything will ever keep you apart. But if you let those little things keep you apart over time, it builds up to a big gap.
Yeah.
And it makes it really hard to swim back to that person. But you got to do it anyway. You got to put in the work. because you don't want to be the person in 20 years who has a list of resentments, who has a list of bitterness and heartache, and leads to, total breakdown.
Yeah.
The next thing that we were taught was to continue dating, even in your marriage. And that can be really hard when kids come along. I mean, I never realized how difficult that could actually be.
Yeah, I think it was by the time Annie was 10 months old, we hadn't gone on a date for like 12, 16 months. Yeah, her whole life. Like,
yeah.
It's been a minute, and someone just sat us down and like, hey, you need to date. You need to carve out time weekly, find time together and date again.
Yeah, it was actually easier when she was actually like an infant, because the three of us would go somewhere, but she would just stay in her car seat or whatever. And she was little. And so I feel like we had more dates when she was a baby than now that she's up on the move. She takes more energy and more time. And it's a good thing. It's a beautiful thing. We love it. But if you don't have that time where it's dedicated to just you two, then you're not going to foster that connection.
And what's been challenging for us to find times to date is babysitting. Find friends, family, even friends you can like share babysitting, where it's like, we'll watch your kids one night. We'll flip-flop. So you can go on a date this week. We'll go on a date next week. Or pay for a babysitter. Do something. Find a way where you can do it. Mm-hmm. Put it on the calendar too.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the hardest things, is that we haven't been intentional about putting things on the calendar and deciding. It's easy when you have things in your life that are automatically demanding. Like, one thing I always found hard to put on the calendar was like a Sabbath, a rest time, but also a date night. Like, it's not a mandatory thing in your life, but it actually should be.
Yeah. I made the comment to you recently on the topic of Sabbath. Like, how do non-Christians rest more than Christians? God is the one who commanded the Sabbath. And now that I feel like we have a full-time jobs, we have a kid, and we're also in ministry, and we don't get a Sabbath on Saturday or Sunday or throughout the week. And that takes into like our ability to foster our marriage and go on date nights, etc. Like, we need to reclaim and restore the Sabbath, because it's going to strengthen our marriage, where we can go on date nights and take time together and slow down together, walk together.
Yeah. So I know some people are really good about it. They actually pick a night every week or whatever it is, a couple of times a month, where it is set in stone and they're not changing it. And I wish I was more like that. I just feel like I can cater to anybody and just, move everything around.
We've started to dabble with that idea of like, okay, we're going to try to aim for like Friday or Saturday is a date night.
Yeah.
And see how that goes. We're like shooting 50% right now.
if
that. So, and tip number 3 is one that I've been thinking about for future-proofing your marriage, is become like Christ. Christ is the ultimate example of a marriage that lasts forever. Like, he made a covenant with his bride, the church. And so who has the character to have a marriage that lasts forever? That's Christ. That's the fruit of the Spirit. That's the 1 Corinthians 13, the chapter of love. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not boast. Does not parade itself. Is not puffed up. Does not behave rudely. It does not think evil. Is not provoked. Like, those are the qualities that make a marriage last forever. And are we treating one another with the fruit of the Spirit? I know I can raise my hand and be like, Megan, I have not treated you the best over the past year, and I need to get in the secret place. I need to get the word in me so the word comes out of me in the way I treat Megan. Am I treating Megan with the fruit of the Spirit? Because that's the greatest barometer to a marriage that lasts.
Mm-hmm. I heard recently somebody share that whenever her husband came home from work, they would give a number, and it's what they had left over for each other from that day. And if it was like, hey, I've got 30% left today, I can't give much, the other person would say, it's okay, I'll pick up the slack, I've got 70. Or vice versa, I come home and I've got 80 today, I can do whatever you want to do. And if you only have 20 or if you have more, like, that's great. And then she just talked about having grace for each other when you had less did 100% for each other total. But I think that like that's a huge thing in marriage. There's going to be seasons where you don't have enough. I think it's really important to not make the other feel guilty for that, or let yourself feel super guilty for that, but to talk through what you have and to give grace. Like Dustin was sharing about, like, having Christ the center of your life, becoming more like him. We become more like him because we spend time with him and we learn more about him and we read the word and we grow closer to him. Don't stop learning about each other. Don't stop growing. Don't stop lifting each other up and being there. Be there. And keep learning about each other. There's more. There's always more. And trust me, you're going to change. Who you are is going to change. I pray it's for the better. But you're going to go through stuff and you need each other. So,
yeah. And I think on this topic, like the enemy uses fear, guilt, and shame. He is the accuser of the brethren, like a lion prowling, seeking whom he can devour. But Christ uses love, grace, and mercy. And am I talking to my spouse with love, grace, and mercy? Can they confide in me? Can they share their most vulnerable parts of their heart? And doing that well. I know this past week I've been stressed with work and just a situation going on there. And I was able to confide with Megan, and she just strengthened me. She was there for me as my support. And she's a way better listener than me. I'm still growing leaps and folds in this area. I need to grow. But I know oftentimes when she comes to me to share something, I don't always have empathy and grace there. I can be very solution oriented. Like, these are the steps you need to take to solve this. And like, let's take action instead of like connecting with her heartbeat in that moment. I love you, babe.
I love you.
So those are the 3 tips mentors have shared with us recently of have couch time because your marriage is the foundation of your family. Continually date. We haven't done that in a while because Annie came along and it's been 10 months until, we got to put that on the calendar. And the last one, become like Christ, because Christ is the ultimate example of a marriage that lasts because he made a covenant with his bride, the church. And so if we emulate, if we embody, if we live out the fruit of the Spirit, this will save our marriage. This will save your marriage, etc.
Side note, we are enjoying our iced chai lattes.
So good.
Yes, they're homemade, but the cool thing is these mugs came from a wedding. So I had a friend who she and her fiance at the time went around to all these thrift stores, and then every glass mug they found, they bought as wedding favors and had iced coffee at their wedding. So if you're freshly engaged and looking for ideas, it's such a cute one, and we enjoy them very much. So
Awesome. I hope you guys have a great day.